Hello, YouTube. This is Alpha White Wolf.
And I'm Axel Reaper. I got my scythe back. Goddamn moors.
Do you realize how long it's been since you started chasing that guy?
It's been, what the? 3 weeks? Fuck!
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, sorry for that little delay. We just had to take care of something involving Axel Reaper's scythe.
Oh yeah, I got my scythe back. And I caught my breath. So, why don't we get into this amazing match? We have Kratos.
Versus War,
First, let's start on Kratos, the
Ghost of Sparta.
and War, the rider of the red horse.
In this matchup, we're going to be basically taking them from the respective series. Kratos from the entirety of the God of War series, with greater concentration on what he does in God of War 3.
And we're going to be taking War from his only game, Darksiders.
As well as some slight excerpts from his comic series.
That as well.
In any case, we've been looking forward to this match for some time.
Yep, and we've been pestered about it multiple times.
Oh yes. So, without further ado, let's get on to a little match between the Ghost of Sparta and the Rider of the Red Horse. Information time! No more Monster for you.
Oh, give me a rest. I don't drink Monster. I drink coffee. Coffee.
Category 1. Physicality.
In Physicality, we take the combatants that we evaluate on a number of aspects. These aspects being strength, speed, agility, reflexes, flexibility, endurance, and pain tolerance. Age and prior injuries are evaluated at the end and help us to get a better understanding and sometimes even a better perspective of their previous feats.
Old, broken strength, you name it. We got it right here in this screen.
And we will be displaying later on in the episode exactly what we mean with this. First off, though, a little something from Axel Reaper in regards to Kratos' strength.
Okay, so in this scene you see right here, Kratos is playing around with Hades right now. And we found out that Kratos loves this game. And we decided to call it Hammer. Just watch as Kratos uses Hades like this.
And that's how a God of War plays. Furthermore, Kratos has a few other feats of strength, such as when he tore off Helios' head, as you just observed.
Ha, heads up.
And War is also known for doing some pretty strong things, such as when he just punched that giant bat across the field, jumped a massive distance, and then proceeds to do this.
Rip off your wings!
Precisely.
No more flying for you.
Perfect landing.
Superhero landing. Now this is also another way we like to play Hammer. But this is War's way, with a train car. Boom, boom, boom. Relentless. Painful. Death.
And the finisher.
For the finisher, boom. I don't say anything, but damn, that's gotta hurt. And rips him open.
So, when looking at these feats that we've seen, it's very difficult to determine who is stronger than the other. They both have very impressive feats to their name.
And judging by the height of Hades, I can say that his weight is probably somewhere around the same as let's say a couple tons. And even bigger is, the thing is, you might think, okay, well, he's using a rail cart that would be on a train tracks for war, but they're on wheels. So we kind of determined that that would be in the same range.
Yeah, Hades was definitely shrunk down in his fight with Kratos just now, and the train car was definitely made a little easier to move by the tracks. However, that does not detract from these feats, because with Kratos ripping off the head of a god with his bare hands is impressive enough.
And ripping off the wings of a bat. Giant bat, let me tell you.
Not long after punching her several dozen meters,
And jumping several dozen meters in the air.
to land on top of the head of this giant bat.
Yeah.
So, with all this, we really have no choice but to declare that when it came to strength, War and Kratos are equals. There's really no way around it.
To be honest, they're both tanks. They're extremely strong and can take a lot of punches. So at this point, we realized how similar they really are. They're so similar in strengths that we just had to say that they're equals on this.
But don't worry, we're pretty sure that later on in Physicality, there's gonna be some swaying back and forth in this category.
Oh yes, you're right. Alright, next up we have speed. Dodge roll! Dodge roll! So we're going off of pretty much the normal running and the dodge rolls that Kratos does. I mean, his running is not as impressive, and then we have War. His running is the same, not really that impressive. He does have the ability to do like a dash, but that's pretty much it. So we're probably gonna go with War on this because of his dash.
In actuality, the dash and the roll don't really cover all that much ground when you look at things from what limited perspective we tend to have with Kratos. However, what we noticed looking closely at War is that he's marginally and almost non-existently marginally faster with just running than Kratos. Now, this doesn't really affect the match too much, and both of them are known for pulling off some pretty deft evasions with their dashes and with their rolls. But the fact is that when it comes down to it, they're still the same in how evasive they are with those maneuvers. It's just that War is just a slight bit faster on foot.
Yeah, I mean, all that, to be honest, is, so you can see by the videos we had shown, War is faster than Kratos, but
It's only if you really, really look closely and pay attention.
So to be honest, War gets the upper hand on speed, but not by much.
Barely skin of his teeth. Furthermore, agility is being kind of discounted because neither one of these characters is known for pulling off sudden feats of acrobatics.
Like I said, tanks. They just pretty much take the hits instead of try to dodge them, or they just try to stop them.
To clarify a bit more upon that, they aren't going to be moving all that gracefully. It's really just forward, side to side, and back for these guys.
Exactly. Dodge roll!
You are obsessed with that maneuver.
Hey, I can tell you another one. Do a barrel roll!
Oh my god, we are going to get sued so bad. So, when it came to reflexes, both combatants have shown some pretty good things with what they can do in terms of reaction time and reflexes. Both of them known for pulling off some deft sudden stops, such as with Kratos.
This is him stopping a centaur pretty much on the dime. He turned around immediately. And then this is him stopping a water monster after opening a door. Barely had any time to react at all.
True. In regards to the hippocampi here, the monster that Poseidon summons, we're showing you right now a number of freeze frames. Now, these freeze frames show that it's a very brief series of moments between when Kratos recognizes the threat and when he reacts to it. After, as was said, he was opening a door that was actually giving him a decent amount of trouble just now.
Yeah, pretty much he opened the door and this thing immediately tried to kill him. And he pretty much blocked it like it was nothing.
We estimated that without the slow motion of the original clip, that Kratos had the entirety of maybe a second and a half to recognize the incoming threat and prepare for it. That is shockingly fast. But War has a few things up his sleeve as well. See, when it comes to War, it's also impressive.
Teleport.
It's also impressive what he can do, but it requires a bit of closer examination. In this example, he had a moment to actually recognize an incoming threat, proceed to block it, after he had time to recognize and anticipate, and then retaliate.
Pretty much countering an attack that he saw at a moment's notice. And next, we have pretty much a spider lady.
Yes, this was one of the final and arguably one of the toughest bosses. She was able to teleport around the arena, either directly above him or directly in front of him. In either case, he had only a brief moment to recognize the threat and then dodge accordingly.
With his dash, of course.
However, one thing that must be observed is that with these frames, the spider hangs in the air for about a second before she begins her descent.
So pretty much what we're saying is, it's not as fast as the water monster that Kratos fought, and to be honest, if you watch the screen exactly, the way the spider conducts the teleportation gives kind of a pattern, to be honest.
Yeah, to put simply, Kratos was able to react to incoming threats on a routine basis that he not only didn't see coming, but he had no idea were even threats until almost the last second. Whereas War had moments to observe, understand his opponent's actions, and then react. It was still pretty fast,
But just not as fast as Kratos.
yeah, Kratos is just so much faster.
So we're going to be giving reflexes to Kratos.
Yeah. Pulling off feats like that from his entire game series all the way back to God of War 1 with his quick time actions is impressive.
And also at the same time, flexibility, it's going to be canceled to this one. Same thing as the last time. They're both really kind of the same in flexibility. They don't really show any things of flexibility.
They're not contortionists. They're
not.
If they're going to be bending at all, it's not going to be any further than haunching over and reaching back.
They're not going to be, they're not going to be doing yoga all day long.
No. These guys are stand up and be in your face kind of guys.
Yeah.
When it came to endurance, really the best thing we could have done, and so we did, was we took each game as the entirety of their adventure done in a single playthrough. Basically, these characters start and they just don't stop until the job is done. And this time they have to spend doing this is roughly how much endurance they have. Which, for Kratos in God of War 3, a lot of the playthroughs we see for that game take about 5 hours, 35 minutes. Usually, give or take about 15, 20 minutes on either side.
And, well, the playthroughs being about 5 hours, it can explain the endurance level. And then we get to Darksiders. Darksiders is probably around 10 hours and 30 minutes is what we've come to see. Now, at the same time, this is normal playthroughs for people, so we're just judging on this so far what the endurance looks like. There can be more to this, and we have more to go off of as well.
It's just that the problem with a lot of video games is that the video game mechanics make it so that if you really wanted to, you could play pretty much any game in a single continuous playthrough, which makes finding out how much endurance these two combatants have exceedingly difficult.
But at the same time, if you watch in certain scenes, you'll see Kratos and War don't really get tired. They kind of don't really lose breath. They kind of just keep going. They're really like super human demon people. They're super endurance. Let's just
Super
put it that
people?
way. Fuck off. They have super endurance, okay? We don't see them get tired, they just continue. And I think that's how the game was made to be, each of them.
Well,
So,
with Kratos being a demigod, that's kind of understandable.
and well, then you have War, the horseman of the apocalypse.
Yeah, a Nephilim, half angel, half demon. It's no wonder these guys can go for ungodly periods of time.
So we're just going to go off and continue on endurance as we go into pain tolerance.
And another thing that some people have pointed out, and I'm going to say this right now before anyone tries to bring up arguments about it. The way we evaluate any kind of video game character is actually done with a lot of calculation. It's done based upon a notion of we are evaluating this character based upon if we were standing next to the character as a silent, casual observer watching them do this. We aren't evaluating them as if they're video game characters. We're just evaluating them based upon the notion that these are guys doing something in the world, and we're just there able to observe it. This is how we're able to... Hey guy, just put that box down, please.
Yeah, don't take my scythe this time. I promise you, your soul is going to be mine.
Easy there, Reaper. Easy. Here. Here, have a Coke. Better?
Better.
In any case.
We do not sponsor any commercial whatsoever.
Anyway, so yeah, that's basically how we do it. We evaluate all video game characters and characters in general as if we're just standing around observing what they do, not as if they're being played. Because at that point, it's really the player's skill that determines things, not the character itself. And it's the character we care about now.
Yeah, so right now we're going to get down to pain tolerance. So, as you can see right here, that is Kratos getting stabbed with a giant sword by Zeus. But at the same time, while he's being stabbed, he's able to make a smug remark to Zeus. And then you have here, this is War, and he gets his arm cut off by his brother, Death. And guess what? Doesn't even flinch. Nothing. Nothing at all. He doesn't flinch or anything. Yet he loses an arm.
That is very impressive. With Kratos's being impaled, this is by a rather large sword through his gut.
With lightning.
And as stated, he had enough, basically, smartassery, if you could call that a word, to make one final jackass remark to Zeus about how the gods are just pathetic and weak.
Also, don't forget, Zeus, the god who rules Olympus, and he just got stabbed by him. And he's making a smug-ass remark to him. Hint.
Also keep in mind that this is Zeus. This is Kratos' father.
Yeah.
Likewise, when it came to War, as was stated, he got his arm cut off, and not only didn't flinch at it, but actually made a kind of snide, snappy remark in response to one of his brother's comments.
Yeah, so gets his arm cut off? Yeah, pretty much the bird to your brother, and nice remark. Yeah, Death wasn't probably listening to that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Death didn't give a flying... I'm not gonna curse on this one.
He didn't give a shit. I'll say it.
I'll leave the cursing to my partner here. But anyway, yeah. Can you imagine being impaled to the gut with a giant sword? It would hurt. And having your arm cut off by a scythe, or any weapon at all, really, would hurt like crazy.
And these both characters took both these pains like they were nothing.
They took them like champs. But yeah, when it came down to it, we had to evaluate that both of these guys are pretty much unable to be evaluated in terms of their endurance and pain tolerance.
Like I said, tanks. They can take the pain, they can take the hits, and to be honest, it's not really going to affect them that much. They're really strong, and at this point, we really can't come to a decision who was able to endure more pain. I mean, yeah, I could get my arm cut off, and I could impale Wolf with my scythe, but that's not going to solve anything for us. So, at this point, I'm going to say we don't really know who can really stand more pain. Let's just say they can stand a lot of pain.
Put simply, these are not conventional warriors. So anything short of a decapitation isn't going to end this fight.
Pretty much.
So with that in mind, we basically have to say that when it came to endurance and pain tolerance, Kratos and War are equals in this. So when it came to age, we had to evaluate both of these characters based upon appearance. With Kratos, he looks like he's in his 40s, early 50s at the oldest.
And then you have War, and to be honest with War, he looks like he's in his 20s and 30s, but as you know, War, the Horseman of the Apocalypse, has actually been around since it was made up, which is millennia. So he's way older, and pretty much at the same time, we can't really get an accurate information on how old he actually is.
There's no source that confirms his exact age. So, based on that, we had to conclude that much like agility and flexibility, age is going to have pretty much no real part to play in this.
And the reason we're going to go with Kratos on that is because he's still technically a demigod, but at the same time,
You see how he moves.
Yeah,
In the scenes that we've shown you, he doesn't exactly get affected very much by this.
well, what Reaper is trying to say here is that there's no advantage or disadvantage given for age, because even though Kratos is in this age range, he's never displayed anything less than what he's normally put out his entire life. Immense strength, incredible endurance, awesome physical abilities. He's never showcased anything less despite his advancing age. And War, on the other hand, he's pretty much looked the same for centuries, if not millennia. So it's impossible to see whether or not age is going to play any part in this, which makes us believe that, in all honesty, it won't. Prior injuries, on the other hand, are another matter.
First, we're going to have Kratos and his scars.
Yeah.
When he got stabbed by Zeus is one of the big ones.
Yeah, that's really the real big one that we get to see a lot. It doesn't seem to detract or aid him in any way, only kind of giving us a visual understanding as to why he wants to destroy Olympus.
Hey, he took it from Zeus himself. I can say that's a Spartan training for you.
Yeah. Spartan training with a lot of pent-up aggression. War, on the other hand, has the gauntlet that he got from Death. If you will recall, Death was the one who cut off his arm, but being the really cool big brother that he was, Death fashioned War this gauntlet.
Ha, cool brother. Bullshit.
Hey, Death could have easily just left War with a stump.
You're right. You're right.
The big thing about this gauntlet, though, is that while it is bigger, a little more cumbersome, and definitely not something that's easily hidden, the fact of the matter is, it's unlikely that this thing can really feel all that much pain. Early in the game, War kind of howls in pain when the Watcher is bound to him, but we don't know whether or not that's more of the Watcher being bound to him as a person, or if the Watcher was just bound to the gauntlet itself. Furthermore, as was seen in his reflexes bit, War is able to use this as sort of a shield, which is very impressive. Gives him a bit more flexibility, you might say, when it came to how he can attack and defend. Added to the fact that it is in fact a giant hand, it's most certainly useful for beating up people.
Pretty much. It's a giant shield. on his arm. Which it is his arm.
Pretty much. It is not something that is going to be detracting, and if anything, kind of aids him. So, with all that said, it really came down to a question of whose prior injuries detract from them or aid them. Kratos has no detractions or aids from his injuries. He gets nothing from or nothing taken from him by this wound.
But War, on the other hand, pretty much gets a giant shield.
Yeah, he may have lost an arm, but his replacement is most certainly something that is a benefit to him. And with that said, we have to give the advantage to War in terms of prior injuries. Now, with all this data collected, we came to an unfortunate conclusion about this verdict.
Everyone ready for the
Big exposure.
equals?
Yes, we have to declare that in terms of physicality, War and Kratos are in fact equals.
Like we said, they're tanks, they have weapons. I mean,
That maybe the names justify them even better. Think about it. God of War, the game, versus War, the horseman.
In any case, that's definitely going to be how it's playing out here. War and Kratos are equals in physicality.
Category 2, weaponry. Alright, so first we're going to go off with Kratos' weapons. Pretty much a one-man walking army. He has an amazing arsenal for pretty much taking down gods. Hint the name, God of War. Now, we're going to start out with his first weapon, the Blades of Exile. These weapons are mid and close range attack weapons. Get over here!
Wrong series, Reaper.
Oh, come on, he's like my cousin.
Be that as it may, these blades also allow him to summon a protective phalanx around himself that not only protects him from damage, but also damages enemies that are around him.
Come here! Ready?
Next is the Bow of Apollo. Allows him to shoot long range and set his enemies on fire.
The Bow of Apollo serves as the primary long-range weapon in Kratos' arsenal throughout the game. It allows him to fire rapid-fire
Gotcha,
arrows,
bitch!
but also can allow him to set enemies ablaze when properly charged.
Next is the Blade of Olympus.
The Blade of Olympus was the blade that Zeus, in the previous game, tricked Kratos into draining his godly powers into in order to weaken him and thus kill him in the previous game.
Allows him to release his Rage of Sparta, and it's a close range weapon.
Duh.
Next up are the Claws of Hades. They're just like the Blades of Exile, but they move almost as if they're possessed.
As was said, they have a very distinctive way of moving. Kind of destructive, really. And more importantly, they allow their user to summon souls.
Get over here!
Wrong franchise.
I know.
Next is the Head of Helios, which Kratos pretty much ripped off Helios, the god. It can be used as a lamp and a stunner.
As was said, it is a stun-type weapon that can create a solar flare.
Next is the Boots of Hermes. They allow Kratos to pretty much do parkour, Spartan style.
These boots allow Kratos to walk across and up certain walls that are marked by glowing footprints, as well as allow him to do some kind of charge attack when properly used.
Next up is Nemean Cestus. Pretty much Hercules' old boxing gloves.
These weapons allow Kratos to empower his punches with much greater force than before, and when properly utilized can be swung on chains. However, their best weapon is the Nemean Roar, which essentially works as a giant shockwave when Kratos punches the ground. They're primarily used to break onyx crystals, but can be used in combat as well.
Hulk smash! Next up is the Nemesis Whips. Pretty much Storm's lightning bolts meet Wolverine's claws at the end of a chain.
These weapons were given to Kratos by the smith god Hephaestus, and essentially work much like the Blades of Exile with an electric twist. They allow him to summon these bolts of electricity that can link opponents. Very damaging and very easy to use.
Fry, motherfuckers. Up next is the Golden Fleece. Not only does it absorb energy, it also reflects it.
This was obtained by Kratos in God of War 2 on the Island of the Faith, and allows him to basically absorb and redirect bolts and surges of energy in the form of fireballs, but also allow him to absorb and deflect kinetic energy.
Next up are the Wings of Icarus, which allow Kratos to glide and fly in the right situations. If you don't understand how you fly, he has wings.
Yes, in the right situations, Kratos can use updrafts in order to obtain a kind of flight, as seen with him trying to go up the chain of Olympus.
I believe I can fly. Kratos is not only a one-man walking army, but he has an amazing arsenal.
This is not a man who comes into battle ill-equipped. He has weapons and armor for just about everything.
Up next, we have War and his weapon and his arsenal. Here we go. First up is Chaos Eater. This is pretty much a big fucking sword and his primary arsenal.
Yes, this is his primary weapon and the one that you will probably use the most in the game. It's a devastating weapon that's effective against both animate and inanimate objects.
Up next, we have the Earthcaller Horn. Awakens stone people, very large that open portals, and can be used as a weapon.
As was said, the Earthcaller Horn is primarily used to awaken stone guardians that serve primarily as obstructions to war. However, when properly used, it's also a sonic weapon.
Up next is the Crossblade. It slices, it dices, it chicken fried rices, it's able to kill long distance enemies, and it can tear the shit out of others.
As was said, this weapon can be, when properly charged, used to grind against enemies or take them out from long range.
Up next is his pistol, Mercy. Defies the laws of ammunition physics, and I want it so bad.
Excellent for taking down distant enemies before they can get too close to him, although it's not much use anywhere else.
Next up is the Tremor Gauntlet. It intensifies his punches, and is pretty much his boxing glove.
While this weapon can be used in actual combat, it is primarily used to destroy crystal structures. Very useful for traverse and exploration.
Who would be a horseman without their trusty steed known as Ruin, who actually tried to kill him at one point?
Yes, as any horseman ought to have, War has a horse, allowing him much greater mobility and speed, and offering up more avenues of attack. It amplifies his sword strikes and is usable with his gun.
Up next is the Abyssal Change, which pretty much is his version of Batman's grappling gun.
Yes, this essentially allows War to grapple faraway objects, or if necessary, pull himself to easy-to-scale objects, swing from chains, grapple with enemies, and is usable even in combat.
Get over here!
I believe that is the closest we've ever used that analogy.
Up next is the Voidwalker, pretty much like the portal gun from Portal.
Yes, this item allows him to open up portals on certain surfaces and can actually be quite useful in combat. However, it's mostly a limited object, primarily for exploration.
Up next is the Mask of Shadows. It pretty much allows him to see into the Shadow Realm. Yeah, wonder if we can see Yugi in there. It's time to duel!
This object allows War to see into the Shadow Realm and interact with it in ways that he normally can't. He had to earn it after killing a dark version of himself, and he has to use it in order to traverse Eden for a time, and find a weapon that he uses later on.
Up next is Harvester, his trusty scythe. I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it!
This weapon is essentially a very nice crowd control device, and is one of the only weapons that you have to buy in order to use. It's excellent when you want to shred enemies that are trying to swarm you.
Ha, mine's better. Up next is the Abyssal Armor. Pretty much another version of his armor, just a lot more durable.
As stated, this armor allows War to take much more damage than his original armor, and looks pretty cool to boot.
Okay, so now you've seen War and Kratos' weapons, but we've come to the decision based on Kratos having the favor for this, due to the fact that literally all of his weapons can
bring more damage than War's can, and at the same time his arsenal is literally designed to kill gods and large crowd control. Whereas War is good for crowd control at the same time, but most of his weapons are made for when he goes on adventures. They're made to just go certain places, not for combat.
Yes, to clarify upon this, while it is true that War is very well equipped, his equipment is much in the same vein as Link's from the Legend of Zelda series. Excellent for exploration and can be used as weapons, but primarily just that, exploration tools. Kratos' weapons, on the other hand, those are weapons that have only two settings: kill and maim horribly.
Pretty much destroy, exterminate, exterminate.
And are actually quite fitting for this particular character. So, with that in mind, it should come as no surprise who we're giving this edge to.
Kratos is the winner.
Yes, Kratos is getting the edge for weaponry.
Special abilities. Alright, so our next subject is on special abilities, but one of the biggest problems is Kratos really doesn't have any of his own that aren't connected to his weapons. So we're basically going to take Kratos out of the picture for special abilities.
Yeah, without any kind of abilities that aren't tied to his weapons, it's kind of pointless to even talk about him in this category. So, we're going to move straight on into War and his admittedly greater arsenal of abilities.
First up for War, we have Shadow Flight, which is pretty much a lot like Kratos' Wings of Icarus. They do pretty much the exact same thing.
Holes is an ability that he gained after a barter with the demon merchant Vulgrim and allows him to travel between areas in this odd pocket dimension.
Next up is War's Chaos Form, which pretty much turns him into a giant demon where he pretty much can kill pretty much everything. It increases all of his strengths and abilities and pretty much makes him indestructible.
The Chronosphere ability, granted to him by the demon Samael, allows him to temporarily slow the flow of time and essentially allows him to traverse more difficult environments without too much fear of retribution from enemies.
Next up is his ability to summon Ruin, the horse that he has. It pretty much just allows him to summon the horse, that's it.
It comes as to no surprise that War gets the edge in special abilities.
Mainly because he's the only one who had him. Whereas Kratos is all of his go to his weapons, so pretty much we can't say that Kratos has special abilities himself.
Yeah, to clarify upon that, War is only getting this advantage because he has a few neat tricks up his sleeve, but most of them are going to be pretty much eliminated.
And that pretty much means they're pretty much worthless.
To point out, his Chronosphere ability is definitely not going to come into play, nor is the Serpent Hole ability, since both of them require outside objects to be utilized.
Whereas his Chaos Form will be utilized as a good weapon.
As will his Shadow Flight and Summoning of Ruin should the situations arise.
Up next, Mind.
Much like Physicality, Mind will be evaluated on a number of sub-categories. The categories of Intellect, also paired off with Cleverness, Psychological Balance, Personality, Strategic Inclination, and Experience. And we will be applying each one of these little categories to each one of our combatants. In terms of Intellect, we decided to evaluate these two combatants based upon the dungeons and temples that they have cleared throughout their history.
So first off, we have Kratos' intellect. First off, he was able to go through Pandora's Temple, the Island of the Sisters of Fate, and the Realm of Hades, which these are almost very difficult to almost impossible tasks.
Yes, Kratos has accomplished some pretty impressive things when it comes to his intellect in regards to his temple clearings. To put simply, escaping from Hades is something that not many mortals could ever claim throughout Greek mythology, and he did it numerous times, at one point even exploring Tartarus and the domain of death.
Athena in this clip clearly says you are the first mortal to ever reach Pandora's box.
Very impressive, to say the least.
Next up is War's intellect. Cleared the 4 layers of the destroyers, Chosen, and the Black Throne of Straga.
Yes, these are admittedly a bit simpler to the ear when discussing a war's intellect, but keep in mind that this is a post-apocalyptic realm, and these are incredibly powerful demon lords, basically.
So you have the power aspect there.
War, on the other hand, has only ever cleared relatively simplistic dungeons and doesn't have a lot of impressive feats under his belt. As such, we have to give the edge in terms of intellect and cleverness to Kratos.
Such as Kratos was the only one who ever immortal to clear Pandora's box and go through the realm of Hades multiple times, pretty much not having much of a problem. So that does answer the point that yes, Kratos' intellect is more impressive than War's. Up next, we have psychological balance, where we start on with Kratos. He's pretty much ruled by his rage.
Putting it very simply, but also very appropriately, oddly enough. Kratos, in this clip, was determined to save Pandora, but after only a bit of goading from Zeus, willingly released her to charge him, and so allowed her to die.
In this clip shows War, and he pretty much at the same time as Kratos is angry as hell. Watch him attack the Watcher, not killing the Watcher, just hurting him, which shows you that yes, he was holding back just enough.
Yes, he actually does let the Watcher live, despite wanting to kill him.
Alright, for the psychological balance, we'd have to go with War, because pretty much Kratos let someone die that he was determined to save, even though just for a couple comments that Zeus made. Whereas War, he got mad at the Watcher, but didn't kill him, so he has more self-restraint.
Put simply, Kratos has been remarked as being pretty much insane, if not close to insane, numerous times throughout the series. Madness and Kratos have gone hand to hand more often than not. But War, despite being a really angry individual as well, showcases much greater self-restraint and control. In terms of personality, both of these characters are pretty angry and aggression-driven individuals. The difference being that Kratos' anger and aggression can be seen in his stance, his posture, his movement, and more often than not, his face.
Look at that face.
It is
The face of a killer.
It is not friendly.
War shows a lot of the same features as Kratos, being kind of angry as well, but he's more of a quiet one than an outbursting one. Both of these things don't really affect both these characters much, so we're gonna keep the personality at an even draw.
Yeah, there's no real advantage to be given either way when it comes to personality.
Because they're both angry idiots.
Idiots is a bit of a stretch, but they are very angry. It's just that War is a little more of a quiet, controlled angry.
Still angry.
Yes. In terms of strategic inclination, we decided that it would be best to once again kind of visit the temples and dungeons that they've cleared and kind of remark briefly upon them. With Kratos, as was stated, he does have an impressive docket behind him, and honestly, it deserves a lot of praise. As stated, he was the only mortal to ever clear Pandora's temple and reach its box. He was also one of the few people to ever brave the island of the Sisters of Fate, and has on numerous occasions escaped Hades, the realm of the dead.
Now we have War, whose strategic abilities to adapt to his enemies' weaknesses and being able to find them, just like Link in The Legend of Zelda, even when they only have one weakness. His abilities to find and see them and change his strategy based upon it is very good, which gives him an edge. He has a good head on his shoulder when noticing these things. In many of these images, it shows what he really does and what he looks at in a lot of different enemies, as you can clearly see.
Yes. As stated, much like Link in the Legend of Zelda series, War is able to figure out his enemies' weaknesses and exploit them, even if there's only one way to actually defeat these enemies.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's impressive alone. Especially considering that a lot of times people who know about war seem as a bit of a moron, really.
But he is the god of war.
Well, he's not a god of war, he's just war itself. Yeah.
Oh wait, that's right. He's going up against the god of war.
The former god of war. But nonetheless, his skills in adaptation to his opponent's strategies and attacks is very impressive and is no doubt worthy of praise.
He'll be perfectly fine. Just let's see how he works against Kratos.
Though he is known for a bit of brutality from time to time.
So with this, we're going to have to go with war, as strategic inclinations is more of his thing, but at the same time, it's only by the slightest margin, just like physicality. Kratos has done very impressive feats with his strategic abilities and way he changes while he goes through dungeons. And war, to be honest, isn't that much farther above him, but has somewhat of a slight advantage on them.
This was honestly one of the hardest parts to call in this category because it is so close. Yes, it's true, Kratos defeats gods on a routine basis, but the fact is, a lot of the times when he's fighting with a very basic, albeit effective, formula. It's not that creative, not that impressive, and to be frank, it's kind of thuggish.
Brute force and dodge rolls. Lots and lots of dodge rolls.
Basically. So we had to basically look at things as Kratos, a person who, when fighting most enemies, is a bit of a brute, but can accomplish some pretty impressive things when it comes to exploring dungeons and other such temples. Or War, who, while completing less impressive dungeons, was able to defeat 5 enemies with very specific weaknesses and adapted to their specific abilities. The final category in the mind category is experience.
As you know, Kratos is the god of war. He pretty much has killed a shit ton of gods and pretty much a lot of goddesses. This has been his life, pretty much as a Spartan, trained very well, but one of the biggest things that are going to put him advantage is the fact that the gods he fought in different ways, and over a period of time learned how to fight other gods based upon the way he fought the others.
Yeah, Kratos' prior experience is nothing to scoff at. Raised and trained as a Spartan, trained by Ares at some point, becoming the new god of war after he kills Ares, and then destroying in a single game over half of the major gods.
I mean, this is one of the amazing things that Kratos can do. He's the god of war.
Former god of war.
Whatever.
Zeus! Your son has returned. I bring the destruction of Olympus!
Now, as Kratos was impressive, we have war. Now, war is technically pictured as a millennia to a couple millennia old. Now, in that fact, he's killed millions and millions of different creatures, demons, whatever, you name it. So, in a way, and even more impressive, he fought his brothers, which are probably on the same level as him, if not stronger than him. So, to put it out there, yeah, war's advantages on experience of fighting is definitely going to give him an edge.
Yeah. As stated, we don't exactly know how old War is. It is speculated that he is several millennia old, but we never actually get a confirmed age. And yes, we've seen him in combat numerous times. We know that he fought all 3 of the horsemen on pretty fair ground, and did pretty well against them, until he was managed to be defeated by Death, who everyone acknowledges as the strongest of the 4. However, the fact remains that throughout his history, there is no doubt he has spent a majority of his lifetime in combat and in conflict.
Whose heart would you have, demon?
Alright, now for the moment of truth. Mind will go to war. Finally, I gotta say, experience has gone to him because pretty much he's lived for so damn long. We can't say that he hasn't had more experience than Kratos, who's what, like 40?
Probably at his oldest.
At his oldest, yeah. So, in a way, we're gonna have to go with war. But don't forget this, even though he gets this,
His experiences are amazing at that, but at the same time, Kratos has probably fought things like war more often than much. Killing gods is an amazing thing, and well as War is the horseman, his attributes to be as strong as they are is kind of a god. So, in a way, this doesn't really give him an advantage over Kratos that much.
As previously stated, the edge in mind will go to War. This is primarily due to the fact that War does have a much more balanced psyche. He matches Kratos in terms of personality, but he's a little bit better in strategic inclination and experience. It's the experience that really nails this home for him. The level-headedness that he has with psychological balance makes him easily able to keep up with Kratos on that field. And his millennia of fighting, I have no doubt that he's come across enemies that are very similar to Kratos. Maybe with less exotic weapons, yes, but still enemies that are much like him. So, simply put, the edge in mind has to go to War.
Finally, last but not least, the verdict. So it's all come down to this, Kratos versus War. And to be our best judgment, me and Wolf have come up with the best decision, saying that Kratos would be the winner.
Non-surprisingly, this is actually for a pretty simple reason. Yes, they pretty much match each other in terms of physicality, and War takes a good edge in special abilities and mind. However, the most important thing of these two is that they're warriors, and one of the best things that a warrior can have are the weapons he brings into combat.
Whereas War had weapons that were devastating, most of his weapons were used pretty much for the adventure. They were used to help him get around. Whereas Kratos' weapons are literally made to 1. Kill gods, 2. Destroy everything in their path, and 3. As much brute strength and damage you can possibly cause.
As previously stated, Kratos' weapons are pretty much set to only 2 settings: kill and maim horribly.
And whereas War did have the advantage on physicality, but only at the slightest, they're pretty much equals.
Exactly. We can't count on a pure physical bout deciding this, and special abilities, most of what War has is kind of minor party tricks compared to what Kratos has seen.
Pretty much at the same time, even though Kratos didn't have any special abilities, his special abilities did come from his weapons, and that does give him an edge, because technically, if you take those special abilities against War's kind of look piggy.
Yeah. What's more is that, unlike a lot of the other previous games, these spells and abilities that Kratos has with his weapons, sometimes they don't seem to use the magical energy, which means that they're essentially limitless.
And even if they use magic energy, and he loses that magic energy, he's fighting against War, and his training in the past still gives him the ability to fight back extremely well.
Yeah, he's fought someone like War in Ares, although I would say that War is probably a little more skilled than Ares was.
Even so, Kratos has gone a long period of time killing multiple gods for that reason. I mean, we literally kind of contradicted ourselves looking at this, saying God of War versus War. Now, in a way, I will say this is probably the closest match we could have ever come to. If anything, if War had more weapons or more deadlier weapons, there would have been no chance for Kratos to win.
Yes, contrary to popular belief, yes, Kratos killing gods on a frequent basis is impressive for most mortals, but the fact of the matter is, when you look at how he fights them, it's not all that impressive. Yeah, he can kill them, he can defeat them, but the problem is, he pretty much just brute forces them. And while that is a valid strategy, it basically hits someone who has years of actual combat training, years of exploring and gathering strength boosting abilities and equipment, and years of fighting in situations and environments that not even the best of the Greek heroes could have survived in. Yeah, going through all that, he would be able to kill gods no problem. If anyone was able to go through all that, killing God would seem pretty simple.
But in the end, if Kratos is going up against war, it's pretty much two tanks versus each other. The one tank's got the upper hand.
Yeah, it's basically two tanks, just one is a little more well-equipped.
Either way, we came to the verdict, and I understand if you believe otherwise that this is incorrect. If you have a comment to leave, please leave it in the comments section below. That will help us understand what you say, and we will entitle to answer questions as well. But as we said, the winner of this battle is Kratos.
Yes, by a very small margin, he is. Congratulations, big guy.
It's